I'm going to grab some handfuls, if I can make you realize it, from last time, wherein I only covered a little bit of what I started to the night before last. You remember I was talking about the apparent interest, the apparent possibility of men being intellectually objective, being able to do things, think about things, state things in a manner that is free from personal feeling, based upon facts. We'll assume, since it's Friday, that you people can collect and fold up in a kind of origami in a way that you wouldn't think about, since we're in a hurry on Friday and the weekend's coming up. And let me see if I can slip in several things. First off, this would almost sound as though we were turning around going in reverse, but we're not. So listen. There is a particular view that you can look at everything going on in life and see everything and all processes as being, in fact, neutral. This is called dramatic pause. See? Well, just think I had convinced most of you that I was, night before last, was talking in such a way and pointing to something specific, that life itself has preference in everything it does, and that there is no such thing, or they can't define what objective is correctly, because there is no such thing. It's not possible that the only thing that it would approach being objective for a man would be if he was dead, that he would have no personal feeling about anything. But he could then be objective if he could still think. So I wanted you to see that it looked like that, from a quick view, to what I just said was in opposition to what I was talking about night before last. That was the purpose of my dramatic pause. But there is a particular view, not incorrect, a particular way to see that everything in the life of man is in itself neutral. I'll pause once more then. Are you ready? In that, in other words, there's a way in which you can see that all things, all processes, all nouns, all verbs are neutral, in that, within themselves. Here it comes. See if you can put it together with night before last. Because within themselves, they have no personal preference. They just have to do as is best serves life's interest and growth. All right, a third dramatic pause. Nobody heard it? All right, it would sound as though, when I pointed out, and some of you could see for yourself, that in truth, generally speaking, men cannot be objective. And it's not an attack on mankind. Things are arranged to where people should not be objective. And I sort of left you hanging on your own to consider why life makes men believe that they could be objective, should be objective, that was something to strive for, and that people should not be so driven by their feelings. And then I pointed out to you, to some of your satisfactions at the time, which made me feel very good and warm, that you cannot be free if you've got an interest in anything. An interest in anything, you cannot be objective about it. And that does not make a comment, yea or nay, good or bad. But if you have an interest in anything, no matter how intellectual, no matter how educated, no matter how proficient, how craftsmanlike you are in that area, that if you can appear to be, to some people, cold, analytic, objective about the field you're speaking of. But you are not. If you did not have an interest in a feeling, you would not be in the field. It can be mathematics. You could be the living epitome of a pencil-toting nerd. All you nerds out there that happen to come in, pardon me, no offense. Apparently, as the British used to say, a cold fish. A person almost apparently sans human emotion. But it's not true. And this is not a commentary on the psychology of man. It never is for you people just seeing me and these tapes for the first few times. I make no commentary on the psychology of man. I don't talk about ghosts and spooks and gremlins. I do not discuss the illusionary. Man has no psychology. We're talking about the nature of life, how life works. And life works through man. So, I tried to get you to the point night before last to realize that in and of itself, per se, as those of a legal persuasion might like to say, if they were sober enough to remember the kind of things they heard in law school, that human feelings, human preference about any given subject is not in itself detrimental to an individual. It's not harmful. It is nothing to be despised. And if for no other reason, I left you with, or I tried to night before last, on this basis that if you had no feelings about anything, if you were objective, as the dictionary says, objective would be, if you were such, you would die. You would be dead. Even if you did not die, which you would, but even if you did not die, you would be useless to life. You would be dandruff, dead skin, psoriasis, a bad odor. That's all you would be. And so tonight I tried to start out, I wanted some of you, I didn't get the desired effect here, to believe that I had said just the opposite. Did I start off and I didn't say man, I said the things in life, that things in and of themselves. So now we'll try to spread it out a little bit. The things are not simply physical objects. How about the things, relationships, beliefs, human emotions, theories, the things that seem to be, that are singularly human, that from a certain, not invalid view, all of them are neutral. Now that includes, let us take a belief. Let's take a belief that short people, I hate to give credit to a California philosopher, especially the ilk of Randy Newman, come to think about it. But let's assume that there's a belief going around that short people have just ruined history. That short people, no offense to short people, that short people have ruined everything. All right, how about people with green hair? But sure as hell since, can I finally pick something that is absolutely neutral? People with green hair, let's assume there's a theory that people with green hair are the bane of human progress. That there is a conspiracy of people with green hair to wreck human progress. Of course, part of the conspiracy is obvious that you never see people with green hair. It shows how well they're hiding. But let's assume there's something like that. You can fill in your own versions. It would apparently be something loaded with emotion, would it not? There's some group of people, the Russians are the ruined nation. We should kill the Russians. Or communism as a theory will wreck the human spirit. Anything like that. Some group of people, a race, a nationality. So apparently, by any city definition, they would say, well, now there is something that's not neutral. Whether the person that made that comment agreed with this wild theory or not. Some racial or political or sexual attack on some group of people. All right, you would say, there is a living example of something that is not only fraught with human feeling, it's based upon it. If you took away the human passion from that, you wouldn't even have a theory, as crackpot as it is. But it is just simply passion, perhaps poison passion they would say, but no matter, that's passion put into words. That it is feeling, it is prejudice. It is nothing resembling the definition of objective, that is, free from human feeling or prejudice. I'm telling you that's not true. There is a particular view, quite valid, that all such things, even those that seem to be entirely based upon prejudice, that is feeling, that they're still neutral, because in and of themselves they have no preference. What do you think a belief is? Is it really a something? Are we talking about something you can get your hands on, like, well, it's a bad TV set? It's a spoiled dinner. It's a car that backfires. It's none of that. But people believe that it actually has some feeling. If I had people who aspired to be intellectuals in the city and I was so dumb as to talk to them, much less debate them, they might say, well, all right, an idea, a theory, a crackpot idea does not exist in the same way materially as an automobile, but the thing has the ability to excite passion in other people. There's the danger of it. You see why I don't debate people in the city? Because see, that was to say, well, don't you see? The thing, anything, in and of itself, no matter how it'll strike you at city level, like, well, that idea that I just heard, that statement that I just heard, is not neutral. That statement is prejudicial to the nth degree. How do you know that? Well, it stirs it in me. Or perhaps it doesn't stir it in me. I'm more sophisticated and I can hold on to my correct thinking, but it will do it in other people. The thing in itself has no preference, no matter what it is. And humans even know that, in that strange way that life lets at least 3/4 of some stuff, and sometimes 3/5 of some stuff, actually seep into human awareness. That is, when they would say such things as, well, what it has, this idea, this statement, this slogan, this book even, what it has, as much as I'm against censorship, they might say, what it has is the ability to stir up unwanted passions in people. And again, if I was silly, I'd want to jump out and go, huh? You know, can you hear yourself? Can you hear life talking in sort of a, of course they wouldn't get this, but now you people would, almost as perhaps a satirical way that it makes men say things like, well, I don't know so much about the whole book itself, and I'm not really in favor of censorship, but that kind of thing will stir up dangerous passions in people. It's almost as though life, I don't want to tell you anymore. Remember the other night I was talking about satire, put-ons, perhaps somewhat humorous ruminations that life may be making itself, and as it daydreams and makes little jokes at itself, somewhat like Kyroots keeps saying that some revolutionists might do in front of a mirror. You know, like every morning look at yourself. There's one of those Kyroots stories, and the guy would say, all right, who's in there, really? Nobody hears that that might be a low-level story about Larry himself. And if he does such things, when his molecules make these little jokes like, imagine a big guy looking at himself in the mirror and looks deep in his own eyes, his reflection, and says, okay, who's really in there? And when he thinks those things, and he has that little fun in his own brain, that people like you, all right, people like me, people like some of us, are the very little molecules that go, that he laughs with, these little jokes. Except you'll never get them, even if you're close enough, that you're a part of a, I don't know whether you people know it, but in Larry's brain there are neural galaxies. There are in yours. It's part of what seems to make your personality I've never gotten into. As far as I know, neurosurgery and medicine is yet to see that, but there are galaxies. There are whole little neighborhoods, neurally, but you can be close to something going on inside your own brain, but you can be close to this kind of joke going on in life. If you don't believe it, how many nights a week do you see me? But back to it, sometimes you don't recognize, you can be close to these jokes and not understand the humor. In the same way that you could be there in part close to a galaxy in Larry's own brain, he's making these little jokes like looking at himself and going, all right, who are you really? To himself even. And he laughs up here and you're close to one of these galaxies, except you go, huh. I'm not so sure that's funny. Or maybe you write it down like, well, I'll think about it later. I realize a lot of people in the room are laughing, but by God, I'm not sure that's funny. You could be right. What if it was neutral to start with? Back to what I was talking about, you could be close enough to such as this going on, but if you have some feeling about it, if you don't realize that everything in a certain real way is of itself neutral, no matter how inflammatory, no matter how weighted, no matter how prejudicial, no matter how insane the idea, the belief seems to be, it is neutral. And just because I made up green people and short people, I just didn't see any reason I had to go into the kind of things that historically attacks whole groups of people. But just imagine that you were a part of some group. And they said, let's assume that you're a native of Georgia or New York, and they said, we're going to kill everybody. We're going to line them up and execute everybody from New York, or from Georgia, from California. You could not say, if you were ordinary, you could not say, well, that is a neutral idea. You'd have to say, well, that's a prejudicial idea. It's a dangerous idea. It is not. All right. Is it dangerous to somebody who lives in Nebraska? Listen to all that great quiet. When I can get everybody to run back to the city limits, and they go back there and think for a while, and they believe that I was talking pretty good and they might get something, and suddenly everybody backs back up to the city limits and goes, I repeat. Well, let's say I'm addressing people. Let's say that everybody hearing this tape right now is a native of Georgia. And they announce, seriously, they announce for various reasons, population, some potential health problems, they are going to send down troops and line up everyone who is a native of Georgia, and you're going to be executed duly. The president's going to sign it. And you can say, well, that is prejudicial. That is not a neutral idea. That was all right for you to talk about one Friday in 1989, but hell, they're about to shoot me. That idea, that theory, that proclamation, that law is not neutral. If you live in Florida, if you live in Nebraska, that's when everybody got quiet. Why? Because, well, wait, that's too obvious, or wait, I went too far? No. There is a quite real way that everything that is native in a singular sense to the human experience is neutral. Because in and of itself, it has no preference. All right, now I've done that twice, and I've already spent now, whatever it is, 10 or 12 minutes. Now let me point out, well, let me suggest and sort of point in the general direction. You realize that it takes the human nervous system right up at the top end to start dividing, to start classifying in such a way that apparently then all that takes place is based upon some sort of preference. But things are wired in such a way, human consciousness, human intelligence is such that it's only working 3/4 of the street, sometimes only 3/5 of reality. Where does it look for the basis of what causes preference? Out there. Even if it seems to have the preference. If a guy says, well, I don't know, I only end up with women who drink a lot and beat me up. I've had 5 wives over and over that did it. But do they take responsibility? Not that they're supposed to, and this is not a psychological commentary, remember. Do they see that in some way I'm a participant in this? I'm wired up that there's a dance I can't get away from. Well, forget all. Let me keep you where I was trying to point tonight. They see that this kind of preference on my part is unsatisfying as it is to me because I'm complaining about it by pointing out that I continually end up in relationships with women who drink and beat me up. In other words, I've got a preference. It's obviously a subconscious preference. And it's obviously an unprofitable preference. It's further obvious that it's not of my doing. I didn't decide to do that. In fact, let me tell you about my home situation, the way my mother and father were when I grew up. Do you hear me? That it's always that the preference is outside, that things themselves have a preference. That is exactly what I'm telling you tonight. Ordinary consciousness goes, no. I'm telling you that things outside are in a very particular, a very peculiar, but a very particular way, they are neutral. But ordinary intelligence cannot see that. It in fact lays the prejudice, in the full sense of that word. I don't mean just racial or religious or national prejudice. I mean having a preference, having a personal, individual preference in some situation that apparently has nothing to do with the situation itself, is where, of course, the word prejudice, that has been prejudged, that you're already wired up, built in. Of course, ordinary people think in some way life has made me this way, that every time I see a woman drunk, I begin to get horny, especially if she might take me home and beat me up. Boy, I really get carried away. All right, that's a prejudice. To ordinary intelligence, that kind of guy, he would say, well, I don't go out and I don't hang around bars and think, well, let's see, what kind of woman will get my nose open tonight? Let's see. Who will I be attracted to? A nice, sober woman with an interest in New Age books? No, let's see. I think tonight I'll find me a woman that, let's see, if I can find one that's about half in the bag already and ask her, hey, I bet you'd like to whip the shit out of me later. No! That is what prejudice means in the city, is that I have already been pre-sold, that I already have a preference that I cannot seem to control instantly. That what's going on, what would seem to be in my best interest, what would seem to be the prevailing winds of the environment at the time, have little effect on me in certain situations. I am already prejudiced. Of course, oftentimes they call it I'm already subconsciously traumatized. I already have some sort of phobia. But all of that you do understand is just them gabbing and beating their gums to keep from saying that they're all wired up, that nobody knows what they're going to say next, and so they invent all these terms, or life has, of course, for people to believe, well, things are not quite as bad as they seem. And then if somebody like me said, huh, they might say, well, maybe they're as bad as they seem, but look at it this way. They're not irreversible. They can be changed. That's what all this is about, so that there's not just some term that, hey, things are as they are. No, because some of the things, now I agree with you. City conscience might say, I can agree with some of what you say, that life seems at times to almost be on a roll of its own, and circumstances can almost run you down. But how about this? Those kind of circumstances, here's one I like that they use, those kind of circumstances were man-made, and men can cure them. Not the circumstances out there, but the circumstances in here. Because I may be off on some kind of self-destructive roll. I may have subconscious traumas. I may have predilections toward behavior that is harmful to me. But something caused me to do that. And so something can cure it. See, all of that is to keep from humanity facing the fact that you're all standing in line, that you suddenly, as though you woke up, just came to your senses, and there you are in line, dressed a certain way, looking a certain way, having a job, perhaps having a mate over here, having a circle of friends, and you're all in this line, shuffling along. And nobody knows how you got there, except you get there, and people are always talking about, well, how did you get here? And you hear people around you, and they say, well, I used to be another place in the line, and then one time I decided, nah, and I left my wife, and I went back to school, and I quit drinking, and I lost 10 pounds, and I joined the church. Really? Well, that's almost my story. And so you join right in. Well, me too, me too. And somebody says, well, what's your story? And of course, there you are. You're 7 or 8 years old, and you don't have a story, because you hadn't done anything, but you immediately say, well, I used to eat too much sugar. I used to be at my little sister, but I don't anymore. And you realize, and everybody goes, well, and you're just right in the swim of things. In a sense, all of that I went through, if you could let me jump back right quick and drag any of you with me, in a sense, all of that is to keep the realization that the very things that seem to drive the human mind are within themselves non-prejudicial. That is, what I told you in the beginning tonight, from a certain, quite real and necessary, useful view, everything apparently out here is neutral. And specifically, the very things that the human mind would tell you is not so, specifically, not just that fire won't hurt the body and that rain won't make you wet. That's all true. But the things that apparently are of greater importance to civilized, thinking people, that is the world of ideas, the world of institutions, philosophies, feelings, the things singularly, uniquely human, that have the power to drive people, drive masses of people. They are neutral. All right, let me see if I can stretch you a little bit further. From that same kind of position, if you can get yourself over there, then I can point out that one of the real specific electrochemical purpose of the human brain is to take these things and apparently, in a necessary, to the humans, in a necessary manner, apparently properly divide and classify them. That is part of the purpose of the human intellect. All right, I'll say it one more time. It's to take things that are neutral, which these things, no matter how prejudicial, inflammatory, derogatory, one-sided they sound, you've got to understand that there is no such thing as an idea that has a preference. You don't go around a corner, I don't care how crazy, insane, prejudicial the idea is, it did not suddenly organically grow behind a tree somewhere. There was not some human at one time kicking rocks and kicked the wrong rock, and this idea jumped up and threatened to bite him on the ass. If not him, a whole group of people, like some Tasmanian devil in that cartoon, just going to get everybody that gets close to it. It is all neutral within itself because it has no preference. But it has this. It has the unshakable, the inescapable duty to go along with the preferences that life has the same way as you do. There is what you've got in common with everything out there. But I just pointed out that everything out there is neutral. The human brain divides up, and you do not have the responsibility, of course, of dividing and classifying everything that goes on in life. That is one reason that you do seem to be almost objective, which the better word is impartial and disinterested, about some things in life. My example last time of a man who's got no interest in sports. Not hostile to sports, just he doesn't really know. Just barely enough knowledge he thinks the thing that you throw up in a hoop is basket something or other. But by and large, he got no interest in it. His mind is not in charge of classifying sports. It just doesn't deal with it. So to him, that's almost a neutral area. If you ask him about, what do you think about sports? Not just this, let's assume this is an intellectually stalwart man in the city. And so he understands that everything is not just the physical formation of it. That you're not asking just what do you think about sports, per se the physical activity, but sports. How it affects people, how it seems to drive people, the amount of space in the media given over to reporting of sports and the scores and stuff. And he'd go, yeah. He'd say, well, I don't know. To him, the whole thing, the ramifications throughout the body of humanity, to him is just neutral. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know what to tell you. I know that billions of dollars are spent. I know that millions of people follow it faithfully. Several times I picked up books, I've turned on TV. I don't know. There is an example. You can find some within yourself. How do you explain that? Well, of course, in the city you can explain it because life will make you explain it. Life will say, don't listen to people like him. God damn it. And so you think, yeah, you're right. But there it is. The thing within itself is neutral. Talking about classifying, I keep letting Kyroots get all the good stories. I had one that I hadn't let him. I keep getting this. Does he channel me or me channel him? How's that go? This reminds me, I hadn't let him do this one yet. I'm tired of him getting them all. Okay. In the city, in this bar, this bistro, two guys are talking after a few coffees, and they started about the world's oldest profession. I think they saw some woman that... But at any rate, being of a more intellectual sort, one of them said, no, it's not that. He said, I'll tell you. And he drew upon, as people want to do, especially in bars, the great Judaic Christian tradition. And he says, you know what the oldest profession is now I think about it? He says, it would have to be medicine, because think, right in the first book of the Bible, God himself performed surgery by taking the rib out of Adam and made Eve. Another guy says, well, also being of the same persuasion, pulling upon his resources, that is. The other guy says, nah, he said it would be engineering, because even before that, before God did that, it said that he separated land from the water. It had to be engineering. And sitting on the bar was this revolutionist. And he heard all that. And at least he had enough knowledge to use their same kind of background if they're going to do the Bible. And he thought to himself, nah, if they're going to do that kind of stuff, then my profession's the oldest, he thought to himself, because then he remembered that back there in Genesis, before all of that, the Bible says, before all that, all was chaos. There's another part to that, not the story, but what I was talking about before. But I thought the story was a good place to try and distract some of you people and let you off the hook. If not, segue. So let me tell you this. See if you can see how this is absolutely unconnected. There is no idea, in the full sense, thought, theory, system, but there is no idea at all that can ever fully reveal or encompass any totality of reality that does not take into, that does not include the thinker of the thought. There is no observation. I'll give you some choices. There is no thought / observation that in any way, when I say reveals or encompasses any totality of reality, I'm not trying to be funny, anything worthwhile, any kind of revolutionary information, anything beyond what is available in the city, in the libraries, in the gutter, in a bar, in your own brain neighborhood. There is no idea, no observation that can reveal such without it including the thinker, the observer of the thought, of the observation. And you thought the opening tonight was hard. Jesus. Well, I'll bet you that some of you thought you even heard the idea and you don't know what to make of it. But all right, here we go. It's not possible for ordinary intelligence to do that. It's not possible for ordinary intelligence to really perceive that. Here is how it would, if I was talking again to city intelligence and I was trying to get it to see this, I could make it see it pretty quick. It would say, wait a minute, what you're saying is that any idea a man has, and I go, yeah. You know, if I was real dumb and expecting to get something from the city, and they'd say, what you're saying is an idea from a man, I go, yeah. You're going to say that we can't really take it as being something, as a useful thought, yeah, unless we take into consideration the guy had the thought, yeah. He said, all right, now I know what you're saying. What you're saying is, when you hear any thought, it's not going to represent all of reality, and we may not be able to take it serious unless we consider the prejudice of the source. That's all you're saying. Well, if I really wanted to play with that kind of tattered quilt of verbiage, I could say, which of course would be a waste of time, I could say to city consciousness, well, all right, you got 3/4 of it. Of course, I wanted to really be truthful. I'd tell them I had 3/5 of it. But do you hear what city consciousness would say? Those of you that thought you either didn't hear this paragraph or couldn't see the pertinence of it. Is anybody in the city with any intelligence knows that? Am I right? Sit around a bar talking about sports. And the guy says, well, I'll tell you what, there is no doubt whatsoever that the greatest team playing in the National Basketball Association, the NBA today, are the Lakers. And he goes on, he starts talking about Kareem and whoever else on the Lakers now. And somebody's sitting over there, and maybe listen to somebody, and this guy sounds as though he is just an expert, that he may be a sports writer or something, and somebody says, well, hey, all of that may be well and good, but you do know some bitches from Los Angeles. You go, yeah, well, that's, I'm not surprised, because you've got to always take into consideration the source of any idea, any comment, any opinion. Am I right? Let's turn the tape over. Can you catch a quick glimpse of the fact that I was trying to get more out into the open, that the city, ordinary consciousness, ordinary intelligence, will almost unanimously agree that you cannot, at face value, take anybody's opinion, idea, theory, without having some knowledge of what may be their innate prejudice, such as saying that the Lakers are the greatest team in the world. First, sir, let me ask you this. Where are you from? Well, I'm from Los Angeles, but that doesn't matter. Well, all right, yeah, I know it doesn't. I just wanted to know. Sure, it doesn't matter. Anybody in the city will agree to that. Anybody in the city will agree that if you start saying, well, the world's only the real religion, let's face it. I mean, the religion, the one that satisfies the ones that has the kind of ideas that wrap up, and then they fill in a blank. Catholicism, Judaism, Presbyterianism. What are you immediately going to suspect if you're just ordinary? Is there any chance at all that you're Catholic? All right, everybody in the city knows that. Why am I wasting my time pointing that out? Because they do not realize it. They cannot take it around the corner where I started out tonight to understand that everything that is the singular part of human intellectual experience, contrary to what people believe, from a quite real view, is neutral. All ideas, all opinions, all institutions, all theories, all political persuasions, all forecasts. And they sound just the opposite. A forecast can say, well, I'm an expert in population. I'm telling you, by the year such and such, the population will be such and such, and 1 out of every 17 people will be dying for starvation. And you can say, well, that is not a neutral statement. That is not a neutral idea. It is. The idea, and everything that I mean by idea, you plug it in, everything that I just made up for that example, that would, people who hear it, its far-reaching implications, everything about it is non-preferential. The idea itself has no preference. It's not possible. It is within the body of life. Whatever preference life has, it must go along with it. The same way that you must. But in the city, people will say, well, you have got to take into account the source of an idea. Uneducated, unsophisticated people will say that. And they still don't realize what I'm saying. Because if they could expand that, just what they said, and at least stretch it around the corner to one more dimension, they would see that what they just said, if there was any truth in the world of great two eyes, that, hey, what I just said is obviously true, and now I realize it, it's absolutely false. That is, that you have got to take into account, just uneducated, somebody out in the field, some guy with a second-grade education, and somebody comes up and said, you see that fellow over there sitting in that truck? He was laughing at this Ford tractor you got out here. He says the only decent tractor. And he talked to me 10 minutes. The only decent tractor is the International Harvester. Here's this guy almost illiterate with his Ford tractor, and he says, go ask that man who he works for. And sure as hell, surprise, surprise, the guy works for International Harvester. Am I right? And the old farmer goes, yeah, you got to take into consideration the source of anything. And you would think, well, that's obviously true. And so they see exactly what you're talking about. No, you still don't see it. Because if they actually saw that, then they would see, because they're saying it without knowing it. What they're saying is that anything anybody says is neutral. And they don't hear it. They can't see it. Because what they're saying is, you can't tell. Of course, I'll point out the obvious if I got to go any further. What they're saying is, well, you can't tell how much faith, what degree of validity to attribute to the statement without knowing what the prejudice of the speaker is. If they could take it around the corner a little bit, it's suddenly, wait a minute, no matter what anybody says, in a sense, it's neutral. All ideas, anything a human can think, any theory, any statement, is neutral in itself. Well, since we're having such an uproarious time, I won't even pretend that this is not connected, because it's not. How about this? Not a whole new paragraph, we'll just turn the page. We'll just forget all that. How about this? All maps are ad hoc. Think about that for a dramatic pause again. I hadn't done that on this side of the tape. All maps are ad hoc. Is that enough? There's another one of my great statements that can't be true, right? A map's a map. Forget for a minute that most of you assumed I was speaking metaphorically. I'm telling you that every map is ad hoc. All maps are prejudicial. That's right, I was going to drop that. Never mind. All maps are ad hoc. All maps have a purpose, and you got to look down. And any map will give you the purpose somewhere. I've never seen a map that didn't, unless you're dealing with a knockoff or rip-off. But all maps will tell you, it'll say, geographical map of Europe circa 1924. Geological map, Northern Africa, 1987. All maps are ad hoc. Now, slight dramatic pause. Everybody realize that's true. It's got to be true in the city. Maps, real maps. Now, let's be emblematic that I'm now not speaking of geographical, political maps, not ordinary cartology. Other kind of maps, all maps. All maps are ad hoc. And to ignore this, to be ignorant of this, to continue to ignore it, is going to ultimately result in a sense of displacement and disorientation. Of course, you might say, ran from or slipped from a metaphorical step there at the end of the sentence, because what I said was absolutely true. If you didn't understand that an ordinary map that you purchased, borrowed, stole, was ad hoc, and you went out and you tried to do one thing with a map, and it was made for a geological survey of some sort, and you tried to use it as a political map, that there you were, they dropped you behind the lines in the old Austrian-Hungarian Empire, however this happened, and there you are, and you have a 1919 geophysical map that was put together by the great Dodge family for Gulf Oil, and there you are hidden, trying to work your way, stay alive from all the warring factions and pull off some dastardly fifth column deed. You do hear me enough, was that enough, that if you're using a geographic or a geophysical map having to do with the material possible mining aspects of that area, and you're trying to use it as a political map to decide, well, how far, which village, which road should I go, that I might reach some of the Allies, or I might get over here with those naughty Huns and they might shoot me. Do you understand that very shortly you're going to become disorganized, disoriented, displaced? Because if you do not understand that a map is ad hoc, every map, That is the final, that is the inescapable ultimate result, is to be displaced. Now, forget all about golf and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, since they've forgotten about us. And realize this, that every idea you ever had, even if you thought you got it from somebody as great as, or even somebody greater, you know, like yourself, a book, an idea, a map, if you do not understand it was ad hoc, and I don't mean that you have to even be concerned, that's a waste of time, it's where the author knew what it meant. Because I can settle that for you if you don't know it. No, you didn't, or she didn't. Nobody knew what they meant. Life knew what it meant. But if you do not understand that a map is absolutely ad hoc for the purpose of something, and forget whether the author of the idea knew what it was, the apparent source of the map, they'll have some answer, but forget all that. You interpret it, you got to assume that the map was neutral, if you've heard me tonight. But you took it as being for our purpose. Ad hoc. To forget that will result, I can say, that sounded sort of good, I thought, displaced, disorganized, disoriented, the three great Ds of the 3D world. I can be more direct and just say that you'll end up wasting your time. That the things that you thought was useful, that you had thought or that you'd picked up from somebody else, were useful, they will become disorienting. They will displace you. You will end up lost. I don't mean any worse. You will simply have wasted your time. Well, it could be worse, but that's not the point. I'm not trying to scare you. But nobody perceives that. Ordinary intelligence does not perceive that. Ordinary intelligence, in fact, believes that there are final answers to everything. Does it not? Certainly it does. If it didn't, people in the city, people staying in line there waiting to be cut down, would be pulling out their little eyebrows, worse than they are now. They would give a whole new life and thrill to the meaning of stress and frustration. Ordinary intelligence cannot perceive of the fact that anything worthwhile to be known is ad hoc, that all useful knowledge is disposable. Birdseye didn't invent junk food by learning how to freeze. Junk food has been this. All the classifications, all divisions, all the separations that the human intellect has done to otherwise neutral things has been a process of development, without people knowing it, of junk food. Intellectually, junk food. It happens, but it does not happen in one person's lifetime. The truth of it is right before people, history. The examples are so crude that even you people can fill them in and make it up. Of what was true yesterday, believed to be literally true a decade ago, is now laughed at. Everybody knows that. But nobody knows that. Because it does not happen within the lifetime of one ordinary intellect. It happens apparently out there, but one ordinary person does not undergo. No human on this planet, no ordinary person has ever walked around believing, to use the great classic example, that in their lifetime they believed at one time that the world was flat. And then before they died, realized in some way that that was totally wrong and the world is not flat. That is not the rate of progress, the tempo of change in life's body vis-a-vis man. So when I say that people know that the truth is finite, that the truth changes, the accepted truth, they say, well, I know all that. That's obvious. It is not obvious. Because what every human believes up here, that is the galactic, the cosmic structure of their own neural system, is such that whatever map they have of that universe, what they think they should think, what they believe they should believe, they do not realize it was ad hoc. It is ad hoc to life But to them, it's almost like clinging to the one piece of paper that in some way is going to get me through this line. It's the one scrap that I may float through. The sinking of whatever ship it was that sank just before I was born, just before I got here. All hell obviously broke loose. But I'm going to hold on to one thing. It says one map. And of course, it's not just one map on the basis of it being one idea or one sentence. It's like I'm going to hold on to me. And I'm going to hold on to the patterns that I think, to the galaxies that seem to connect up here. Or may I put it another way? I'm going to hold on to my personal feelings and prejudices. If I don't, I'll be what? Probably put away. You're right. If you're ordinary. Well, if I didn't have them, I'd probably go to where? Pieces? No doubt. I'd probably be what? Ranged. Even if you don't live in the Midwest or the Great Southwest. This is one of the areas that is so pregnant that I am about to fall into my own temptation of cutting it fairly short, and that is simply that all maps are ad hoc. And ordinary intelligence cannot see that, and to try and do this and not see that, to forge ahead and forget that, is to your own detriment, because you will become disoriented and not even know it. You just be staggering around and you think that you're using some kind of map, some kind of idea, and you can even attribute it to me, like, well, all the great stuff I've gotten from you, and that one, I've been holding on to that, and I keep going around, I keep thinking about that, and I look at it, and you don't realize that you're right. You're going around and around and around. Everything is ad hoc. And believe it or not, I told you I was going to change the subject. That's one of the, it's also connected to the fact that everything from a certain view is neutral. And all maps ad hocly make the thing temporarily. That is, to your lifetime, apparently it is not neutral. Because right here's a map and it says danger over here, don't go over there. Or it says go around this way, swampy area. Unknown possible landslides, rock falls, dangerous beasties over here. So you got a map. There's somebody like me, if you heard some idea that, hey, things out here are in themselves neutral, you go, no. I read this book. I heard a guy speak one time. I studied from a person. I heard a priest, a rabbi, my mother. I've got a map. I mean, it just something in me tells me. All maps are ad hoc. They are for a particular reason. You do understand, do you not? Me saying ad hoc also means that they are seasonal. I use ad hoc. It's not just for a purpose, but all purposes are finite. It's for a limited time. It is to your own detriment to do this, to attempt to do this, and not have a continuing awareness. Some of you have been right nose up to the window with this in regards to our meetings, in regards to being involved with my activity. That is, you've had your intelligence tell you numerous times that, hey, wait a minute, that's awfully close. I hate to be blasphemous, because I've learned a lot, but what he just said, I'm sure that's almost the exact opposite of what he said 2 months ago, 6 months ago. And I still remember the thing because it was so interesting, and he was using the idea of politics. And he was talking about such and such, and I can remember one of the sentences that struck me. I think I wrote it down somewhere, and by God, what he said tonight, God, it's almost the opposite. I hate to say it. Does he forgotten what he said? Is there no rhyme or reason to this? Don't ask me dumb questions. So when somebody asked me dumb questions, I'd have a mirror at home. Speaking of maps, as long as I'm right here, there was something I was using a couple of nights ago that I was going to wait a while and spring back on you, but it's been a while. Let me unfold something I was talking about that seemed fairly simple. The premise, the basic premise that I started that night, you remember about people being energized, that people go out to be entertained, to be energized. not to be exposed to talent. It's not just simply to hear music, to see dance, to look at art, to hear a lecture. It is to be energized. Let me see if I can unfold that kind of map a little bit more. But it's going to take you to cooperate, because I am now unfolding it way past the verbal confines, even the immediate ones. But it's the very kinds of things I'm talking about now. If you can see how everything is ad hoc, and all you've got to do is unfold another piece of a little map. Even if you've got one and you have used up all the ad hocness that was there, it's not necessary to throw it away, because I assure you that's what all this is about. That you may think, well, I've got it all off here, but if you know how, all of a sudden you go, oops. And there was a piece been folded under all this time. You go, oops. And then later you think, well, I've got it all. And then you go, oops, and it keeps unfolding. Let me see if I can unfold a piece. Do you recall when I was talking about energized, I made a specific example. I was going through one of my little things of trying to give you the benefit and to go ahead and do it for you of old Chief Two Eyes when I was playing the game of, all right, some people in city consciousness could say this. And I used the idea of a concert. And I was referring to Western classical serious music concert. And I pointed out that somebody at ordinary level of intelligence can say, wait a minute, people do not go out to a concert. They do not go out and sit down and listen to an evening of Mozart to be energized. And I pointed out that that was not an exemplary way to see what is going on, that people do go out. Even though an evening of Mozart or an evening of Bach fugues may not appear to be energizing, that the evening itself and different aspects within there would bring about a certain kind of energy exchange between the orchestra. But that is, it's that much. Because I could say in a certain way that at a concert, I brought it up to try and I was trying to get you to see one position of how ordinary intelligence always is struggling, fighting against the kinds of things I'm pointing out. That is, a greater, complex description of how life is working is ordinary intelligence constantly. Yours and everybody wants to go, no, you're being silly or you're wrong, I don't understand it. Because the easiest one is just, well, that's not true. Because what I normally think, what everybody else thinks is so glaringly obvious, there's nothing else to see. I may not like it, but it's obvious what's going on, so I don't need any further description of that. I don't need another map. I can see. That is, in some area that I have a personal interest in, of course. That I can see quite clearly what's wrong and what's right here. I can see what's going on, and I don't need you or somebody to say, wait a minute, there's more to it. There is no more to it. We just don't understand why things are arranged in such an inequitable manner as this. Is that your particular feeling? Well, yes, it is. It's my feeling, and I'm proud of it. That's my objective view of the matter. All right. Then oftentimes what I was getting at is I'll jump in and try to do that part for you to show you that I know what I'm talking about. That's not the point, but to show you that that is the common position, or the most common position that ordinary intelligence would take. And then I try to do that for you so that everybody can lapse into yeah, and then try and push it a little bit and to strain it. All right, so I could say this, that my using the example of a classical concert is really not a good example. Me trying to show that people go out to be energized. People do not go out to a tent meeting, to some fundamentalist revival preacher that you might hear on TV, or if you went and saw one and go, what in God's name does this have to do with religion? Say that you grew up in the Presbyterian or Lutheran church or a Congregationalist, or some church that you thought had at least some reasonable intellectual attitude, and they could try and sort of reasonably convince you of why you should live a good Christian or Jewish or Buddhist life or whatever. And you say, well, this has got nothing to do with religion. In the same way that some critics in other parts of life body can say these guys running these seminars, remember, of how to get rich in the stock market. They don't know how to get rich in the stock market. The only reason they're rich is for fools like them out there in the audience paying them to go hear him talk about how to get rich in the stock market. In both instances, parts of life's body can apparently be critical in a reasonable, nay, even an objective manner, that wait, what they say they're doing, these lecturers, these ministers, they're not doing. That is your opinion. Well, yes, it is. That's my objective opinion. All right. And I was trying to point out that that is not the purpose. People do not go out to hear an evangelist or a rabbi or anybody. They don't go there for intellectual or spiritual enlightenment. They go there to get energized. People do not go out and hear Twisted Sister. God bless them right, they're gone. The Stones, Julio, Willie, Rishnikov, Pavarotti, JB if he ever gets out. God bless. People do not go out for the simple reason that they say they're going out, that I love the ballet. You may be wired up that is your personal preference, is the ballet over JB. But you still don't go out, and you may discuss it. That's part of the hobby. You may discuss and even know the French names for the Folie à Deux, which I guess I'm the only person who ever thought that they did that. I can't stop and go through all these with you. You may be singing, or you may have learned enough Italian, and that you carry along your own. They got books of the translation, page to page of the librettos that you go along with the operas, and by now you have some of them memorized, and you discuss it with other people during the intermissions. And so you can intellectually, apparently, at that level, defend, add to your intrigue of the opera, of the ballet. But you still do not go out for that reason. You go out to be entertained, to be energized. Apparently, you could say that my example of throwing in, I purposely pulled it out and said, all right, even people that go out, dress all up, and you can hear a pin drop there at the symphony, and all these dollar-looking people that look like they couldn't dance if their life depended on it, they sit there, and some of them nodding off to sleep, and they're all... And I could say, for city intelligence, I could say, well, you picked a horrible example. That example almost denies you seeing people go out to be energized, right? That's why I did it. That it almost seemed to be, well, wait, you picked the worst example possible. Some of you got to be complex enough for me to be able to do things like this. So you've had that now for 4 or 6 days. Now listen to me. Can't some of you begin to see this? It's only the human, ordinary intellect that properly divides up such things as the concept, let's say, of energized, so that it means one thing. You remember my EC gate? I told you there's a particular part of the human nervous system. I called it the EC, the exciting and calming gate. This is a part of the nervous system. It's recognized in a various, sort of another form. It's recognized by medicine. It's no big secret, except it goes around the corner. That's why I put a new name on it, and it means more than it seems to just biologically to the medical field. But cannot some of you be complex enough to realize that the dynamics, the action of energy itself can be, now watch it, both / either, calming or exciting. Come on. That you could go and sit down at a concert or a lecture that the man did not seem to exude any enthusiasm. But let's go back to the concert. That 2,000 people are sitting there, quiet, relatively calm. That it is a whole evening of Bach fugues, and I even threw that in because there are no great hills and valleys. There are little, but I know there's not. So I'm doing more of the city for you. That all right, the whole evening, 3 hours was almost just very little. I mean, if we're going to get into serious Baroque, there's not But can you not get complex enough now to understand, to begin to see on your own? For me to say energy and energize does not simply mean that. The people sitting there, not just them people, you, to sit somewhere and go, energy can calm and excite. Life has a preference, or there wouldn't be 2 possibilities. There wouldn't be the possibility of being enraged or being afraid, of being sad or being happy, of feeling like one thing is right and this other thing is wrong. Energy in any given circumstance is, in a sense, I know I said I wouldn't do it, is neutral. It's humans that believe, for me to say, all right, to be energized, that you go see James Brown. Everybody, well, yeah, I understand that now. I got there and the band is whipping people up. I go see some wild-eyed evangelist out in a tent meeting. He's got 2 drummers and his wife playing the Hammond B3, and they beat tambourines for an hour, and then he comes out and he screams and he hollers and the crowd gets all worked up. I understand that. But to go and sit down and to hear Browning read, or to hear Red Browned, I don't know, to sit and hear an evening of fugues, of Buxtehude, and people sit there very calm. Can you not realize that they are being energized, that it's still an energy exchange? That's why they went out. Now you could consider this. I'm running out of tape time, but this gets into the real everyday nuts and bolts, the way life works, and it apparently comes out in humans, and they take credit for having preference, having feelings about things that they developed. But you can consider this. This is relative to people's position. You remember the little thing I drew of the relative levels of complexity in the city of just ordinary people. Is according to where people are wired up, where they're positioned, where they suddenly were born and they were placed in that complex line, all the way from extremely simple to extremely complex, just in the ordinary sense. Consider this, vis-a-vis where people seem to be positioned. Consider the physical, the material, the observable difference of people in the city, of the kinds of people that would go to a sitting down concert as opposed to those that would go to a standing up dancing music club. Both of them are being energized. But within certain observable areas, you can turn and you could look at somebody and tell where they would go. That's no big trick. But there is wired up, and the only reason I'm bringing this up here at the tail end is not simply that there are whole groups of people that are going to end up going out, if we're going to talk about music, and if they got any interest in music, we'll disregard those people that apparently have no interest in music. It's not simply there's one group that's wired up, and if you talk about music, they're going to talk about you go somewhere and you sit down, which concerts would be the epitome of that. The music is a sitting down affair of listening to music. There are other people that if you say music, yes, I'm in favor, well, let's go somewhere, where we go to have music. That does not, it doesn't enter into the realm of possibilities. Music is up and moving. All right, so you would at first maybe think, again, humanity is divided up into 2 great classes. Where do we start tonight? It's all neutral. Energy itself is neutral, except on the level of life, that life has continually a preference to use energy to grow. But it gets down at this level. And then the preference people take as personal. That those in a club, dancing, if you get them away from the dance floor a few minutes, you said, do you realize that there are people that go out and pay $17 a night and they sit down? You've seen on TV the people all dressed up in tuxes and stuff in the symphony with all those instruments. Yeah, I've seen that. What do you think of that? And they go, geez, I don't understand it. The people are nuts. Is that your opinion? Well, that's my objective opinion. They don't know what they're missing. That is my objective opinion. How can they do that? And you ask the people there at the symphony as they come out, could we ask you a couple of questions? Do you ever go out to discos? Do you ever go out to good old sweaty clubs where the band's getting down and people have spilled beer on you and throw up on your feet? Not only heavens no because of some social aversion they have to it, but to them that's not music. Well, I know those people think that's music, but even if it was decent music, how can you enjoy it if you're going to get up and drink and it's so loud and everybody's talking to each other's ear and they're whirling about and doing all those funny steps on the floor? Even if the music was good, they should be sitting down and listening to it. Both of them are getting energized because energy itself at the human level is neutral. But does anybody take it that way? Not on your fat ass life. No. If they did, then life would be worse. I don't say the Buxtehude because I like some of his stuff. But life would be like an epitome of a Baroque. No ups, no downs. On the right kind of equipment, I think most of you people in a hospital, when you see that straight line, you're talking about neutrality. You're talking about now The person in question is truly objective. They got no personal feeling. They got no preference. Look at what humanity believes drives history. Warfare between peoples, between groups, between races, between nations, and all that. You know, I'm not here to cure that because it's not an ill. But they believe that this is something to be cured, that there is something amiss. Part of the purpose of the human intellect is to take energy. It comes out as things. That's why I started tonight calling them things, ideas, theories. It's to take energy, the kind of energy that runs the high end of the nervous system, the human thinking mechanism, and to take that which is basically, in a sense, neutral, and it's no longer neutral. Music's not bad. I enjoy some music. I'll be damned if how can you call it music if you're going out there and you jump up and down and look like you're some kind of monkey or make a fool out of yourself? That ain't music. So that's your opinion. That's my objective opinion. That's my real opinion. All maps are ad hoc. Every idea you've ever had was a map. Every idea you had was ad hoc. And you thought it was, you had no recourse, you thought it was for your own purposes. The ad hoc reality was for life's purposes. And for everyone that thinks like you, there's somebody else that thinks just the apparent what? Opposite. For every piece of music that you want to sit down and listen to, there's somebody else real nearby that says, hey, I wouldn't even give that a 70 because it got no beat and you can't dance to it. For every idea you have that life should be arranged politically, socially in such a way, there's somebody else. Your evil twin. No. We're out of tape. But I can assure you this, you're not out of ad hoc maps, are you? Yeah, but you'll have to think about that. I know. Bye.